Hey everyone, Renee here. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing the mid-year book freakout tag. So I love this tag. I did it last year and I had a lot of fun with it. So I'm really excited to do it again this year. For those of you who don't know, the mid-year book freakout tag is kind of a midway check-in for your reading of the year. So I'm going to tell you the best books I've read, the worst books I've read, and books that I'm excited to read later on this year. So without further ado, let's just get into it. So the first question is the best book that you've read so far in 2022. And this question is hard to answer because there are two books that come to mind and I don't own either one of them because both of them are books that I actually listened to on audiobook. The first one is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. This book was the very first book that I read this year and it blew me away. I thought this book was so fun. I had such a great time reading it. It's such a beautiful love story, but there's also so much more to it. This book follows our main character, Piper, who is an LA socialite, and she gets forced to go to this small fishing town for the summer to learn what it's like to work and live on her own and fend for herself from her stepfather. And the town that she actually ends up going to is a town that her biological father grew up in or was from, and her biological father has since passed. So there's also that depth of family aspect to this story, along with character development. We see a lot of growth in Piper throughout the story, which was amazing to see. And also the love interest, Brandon, Mr. Taggart. Yes, please. Holy moly. This was a book that I literally expected nothing going into, but I decided to read it because everybody else was, and it's so deserving of the hype. So good. And then the other book that stands out as a top book of the year that has worked its way into my favorites list is actually a thriller, and that is The Overnight Guest by Heather Gudenkauf. This book is the only thriller that I've ever given a 5-star to, and I've read my fair share of thrillers, so that's why this one to me just stands out above the rest, and it's definitely worthy of a favorite spot. It was still so gritty, it was dark, it was suspenseful, and it was still shocking, and I really enjoyed every aspect of this. So this book actually follows 3 different timelines / point of views. We have one that's set back in the past where you're following the murders that happened in this town. And then you have another one that happens current day about this woman staying in a cabin during a snowstorm to try and finish writing her book, and she ends up finding a boy in the snow. And then there's another point of view / timeline where it's not actually specified who it is or where or what time it's happening, but you do know that it's someone being held captive. And all of those going back and forth ended up piecing together so beautifully, and I love this thriller. If you are a thriller fan and you haven't read this, I highly recommend you do it. Maybe read it in the winter because, like I said, one of the timelines is in the summer, or not the summer, oh my god, in a snowstorm. So, you know, vibes. Next question is, what is the best sequel that you've read this year? And to be honest, I haven't really read many sequels. I think I've only read technically 2. Sequels have just not been happening this year, but the best one that I've read, and one of the only ones I've read, was Sidetracked by St. Abbey. This is the second book in the Mindfuck series. I'm not finished this series yet, but so far it is so good. It's Criminal Minds meets dark romance. They're short novellas, they're easy to get through, they're on Kindle Unlimited, and it is just such a wild ride. There's so many different cliffhangers, and it's so suspenseful and also a little bit spicy. I'm just having a blast with this series. So yeah, I guess the second book in the series would be pretty much the only one that comes to mind, but it's a good one. I gave it a 4-star. Question number 3 is, what is a new release that you haven't read yet but want to? And that one is going to go to Book Lovers by Emily Henry. If you know me, you know I adore Emily Henry. She is my queen, and I can't believe I haven't read this yet. I literally bought it the day it came out. Why have I not read this yet? I don't know. I have been going in and out of reading slumps and have had so much going on with my life these past couple months that reading was kind of pushed to the back burner, but I definitely plan on getting to this ASAP. It will be read this summer. Honestly, I'm hoping it will be read this weekend. But yes, this is Emily Henry's newest release. I'm not even really sure the premise. I'm sure you might already know with how much this book's been talked about, so I'm not really going to go into it, but I am so, so excited. There are a lot of mixed reviews for it, but I still think I'm going to love it, so I'm really excited to get to this one. Then question number 4 is, what is your most anticipated release for the second half of 2022? And this is actually an easy question, one of the easiest questions on this whole list, and that is Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Taylor Jenkins Reid is my all-time favorite author. I adore her books. I've read about 5 of them so far, and I'm still making my way through her backlog. And to be honest, as soon as I heard about this book, was so hyped. Not just because it's Taylor Jenkins Reid, but I love the fact that it follows a tennis player. I love tennis. I think it's a really underrated sport, and I think it's super fun. I played it in high school, so I'm a little attached to it. And also, I do like sports in general. I do watch a lot of sports, so I'm always intrigued to see it talked about in books as well. I'm really excited, and just knowing that it's Taylor Jenkins Reid, like, I just know that there's gonna be some deeper aspect to it than just the sport. Taylor Jenkins Reid always adds a lot of depth to her books, and I am just really excited to delve into it. I think it comes out in August, and honestly, I am counting down the days. Kind of, because I don't want summer to be over, but I really want this book, like, right now. Question number 5 is, what is your biggest disappointment of the year? And I'm gonna do you one better, and I'm gonna do my biggest disappointment and the worst book that I've read this year, just to add some spice, because I love being brutally honest. And I noticed that the worst book you read this year isn't actually a question in this tag. But first, the most disappointing book, I'm probably gonna have to say The Fine Print by Lauren Asher, just because I had this book so hyped up in my head, because everyone was talking about it and a lot of people were really liking it, and I was seeing a lot of really good reviews, and I really liked the premise too. It's set in like Dreamland, which is supposed to be like Disneyland, and it's a workplace romance, grumpy sunshine, kind of, I guess, enemies to lovers. And those are just all tropes that I kind of really like. And it just, I don't know, all of those together just sounded like I would really like it. And it was so underwhelming. This was such a lackluster book, so painfully average. There's literally nothing special in this book at all. But the worst book, my one star of the year so far, goes to No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai. Oh. This book was, in my opinion, awful. And I don't know if it's the time that I read it, but with everything going on this year, I was just not in the mood to read the most misogynistic book I've ever read in my life. Literally was not having it. And I feel really bad almost criticizing this book because I know the significance of it. This book follows the main character who is severely depressed, and it follows him through his life, to his attempt of suicide, to his life after that, and it's supposed to be a really deep, kind of dark book that touches very heavily on a person's mental illness, and this was one of, if not the last book that was written by the author before he took his own life. So I understand the significance of that. Nothing excuses the amount of frustration that I felt reading this book. Honestly, and it was so hard to feel bad for the main character, because right when I started to feel an ounce of sympathy for our main character, he just turned it right around and just shit on women. And it's like, I understand that mental illness and depression can make people feel, say, do certain things that, you know, I try to be really understanding of. And there's the argument that this was written in like the 40s or something, so things were different then. But honestly, with everything going on in the States right now with Roe v. Wade and the setback of women's rights, this was not the time for me to be reading this, and I just felt very, very angry while reading it, and I did not feel any sympathy at all. I did not cry, I did not feel sad. I literally just felt angry. And annoyed too, because there was a lot of vocab in here that was super repetitive, like clowning, clownery, clownish, clowns. Knock it off. Anyway, moving on. What is the biggest surprise for you so far this year? I'm gonna have to say Almond. The author's name slips me at the moment. Won Pyong-son. That sounds right. That sounds close. This book was really good. I did not expect anything going into this. I actually read this for a vlog that isn't out yet, and it won't be out by the time this comes out, even though I started this like 2 months ago. But this book was unlike anything I've ever read before. We follow our main character who was born with a disorder where I think it's the amygdala or amygdalae in his brain is, I think, shrunk. So he doesn't feel emotions. Like, he doesn't feel fear, happiness, sadness, or remorse. He just has no feelings. And you're going with him through his life as he's growing up and coming to terms with how he is. And I got so much more out of this book than I expected. And I did actually cry at the end. Not like a sobbing cry, like kind of like a choked up, kind of like when your throat gets tight and your eyes start watering type of cry. It was emotional. And in a book where the main character doesn't feel any emotions at all, to be able to make you feel those emotions instead, I thought that was really well done, and it completely took me by surprise. I think I ended up giving this a 4-star, and I honestly would recommend it to most people to read. I think it's very different, and it's very good. I liked it a lot. Question number 7 is, what is your new favorite author, whether it be new to you or a debut author? And for this, I'm gonna have to go with Miss Tessa Bailey. Tessa Bailey, I read It Happened One Summer and Hook, Line, and Sinker this year, and I really loved them both. And I actually did pick up her Christmas book, Window Shopping. I haven't read it yet. I'm saving it for December, but I can't wait to read it, and I can't wait to read everything that she puts out, because honestly, was so impressed with the books that I read by her this year. So it's not a debut author, but she's new to me, and I love her. And that kind of segues into question 8 too, which is, who is your new fictional crush? And I'm gonna have to say, Mr. Fox Thornton from Hook, Line, and Sinker. I love him. He is the epitome of a damaged good, a man with baggage, with a kind heart, and I loved him. I love his character, and also I could argue Brendan Taggart from It Happened One Summer too. Tessa Bailey knows how to write men. I love them. So absolutely, I'm gonna pick either one of her men from this duology, yes. Then moving into question number 9, which is, who is your newest favorite fictional character? And for that, I'm gonna pick 2, and that is because I'm gonna say the Vega twins from the Zodiac Academy series, which is Darcy and Tori Vega. I loved them. I think they're so badass, and I can't wait to continue the series and see how they develop and see how they come into their powers. But they are some strong ladies, and I really, really like them a lot. Considering how much they put up with in this book, or the series in general, they are so strong and so cool, and definitely the epitome of a fantasy baddie that I look for. So I'm gonna say the Vega twins for newest favorite characters. Question number 10 is, what books have made you cry? And I have 2 for this one that distinctly stand out. And I'm gonna go in order, because one made me cry and then one made me cry. So the first one that made me cry, just regular crying, was Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. This one, honestly, both of these books that I'm gonna mention are also in contending for my favorite books of the year. I gave both of these next to 5 stars, and I just love it. I'm gonna talk about this one first. Loved this one. This one was everything everyone said it was and more. The hype about this is real. It is emotional, it is beautiful, and it is such a good book. I love Christina Lauren, favorite author duo, one of my favorite authors of all time. And I was just so blown away by this story. It is a childhood friends to lovers second chance romance. And I usually don't go for those, but in this one, it just works so well. And the different point of views in here, the different timelines from when they're kids to when they're adults, I would recommend it to everyone. And to be honest, I kind of have been recommending it to everyone. So this one made me cry. Like, there were actual tears. But there was another book that made me, like, sob. And my boyfriend came home and saw me in the act. And that is Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. This is fresh. Like, when I say I just finished reading this yesterday, this book is so sad. This book is so heartbreaking, and they weren't lying. Like, I know there's a lot of things with Colleen Hoover and book talk and, like, is it real? This is coming from someone who has a very love-hate relationship with Colleen Hoover. This is coming from someone who has given Colleen Hoover, like, every rating in the book. 2, 5, DNF, 4, I've done it. And this is the only book by her I've given a 5-star because it genuinely is good. We follow our main character, Kenna, who had just gotten out of prison, and she goes back to her town to try to reconnect with her daughter that she had when she was in prison. And she was actually in prison for the murder of her boyfriend, her daughter's father. And you get to see her story, you get to see what happened, and everyone in town is trying to keep her away from her daughter, and it's so sad and heartbreaking. And there's also letters that she's writing to her deceased partner, and all of that in between what she's going through in this town trying to get her daughter back. Oh. And of course there's a love story. It's Colleen Hoover. So of course there's a beautiful love story. Honestly, my favorite out of all that she's written. Ledger is amazing. Honestly, Ledger honestly is in the running for book boyfriend, but I'm still gonna let Brendan and Fox have it. But yeah, anyway, moving on. This was so good. And I did ugly cry. Like, ugly cry. So, if you need emotional damage, either one of these would work. Then we have What Book Makes You Happy, and honestly, pretty much every book that I rated 5 stars or 4 stars. I don't know. There's a lot of books that make me happy, but there is one that makes me happy for nostalgic reasons. That is the 20th anniversary edition of Paradise Kiss. This is a manga collection that I read when I was younger, and I watched it when I was younger too. And when I saw this anniversary edition come out, I knew that I had to have it, and reading it just made me so happy with all the nostalgia that I felt while reading it, because when I originally visited the story, I was in high school, and it's been almost 10 years since then, so it was just so nice to go back and revisit it and also get a better understanding, because this is definitely more of a mature manga that made more sense, and I understood more reading it now in all the best ways. So I would say this one definitely makes me very happy. And this honestly could probably be in the next question too, because I think the next question is, what is the most beautiful book that you've bought or owned this year? First off, this is stunning. So this is definitely in the running. And I haven't really bought any special editions or like cool like versions of any book this year. So I'm going to say that one, but also I'm going to take a different route with this and say Film for Her by Orion Carlotto, and mainly because, I mean, the cover's not anything special, but the contents throughout the book are stunning because of the film photography along with it. And I think that even though it's like a more gritty photography that's discussed throughout, it's just stunning to flip through. Like, it's a very low-key cover, but it's a stunning book just to read. And I think that that's really special when you have a book that when you're reading it, you're so engrossed in not only the beauty of the words, but the beauty of the photos. As a photography major, the incorporation of film photography with the poetry just made it so much better and really elevated the experience. So I'm gonna say this one. And then the last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And this is always the hardest one to answer, because all of them, I need to read all of them. I honestly am really behind in my Goodreads goal. My Goodreads goal is 70, I believe, and I've read 26 books so far this year. Like I said, these past couple months have been a big setback for me, but even though a lot has happened, there has been things that have happened that are definitely good things, that a lot about my routine is going to change moving forward. So I'll probably have more time. And I won't be in this anxious slump that I've been in, because once things settle down, I think that my reading will definitely elevate throughout the second half of the year. So I am behind right now, and I do have a lot on my TBR. And to be honest, I'm not going to sit here and pull them all off my shelf, because there is several that I can look at right now and say, like, definitely want to read that this year, definitely want to read that this month, definitely might read that today. So it's really hard to just pinpoint it into like a handful of books. So I'm just going to say all of them. And with that, that is the last question. So those are my opinions on the books that I've been reading so far. I have had a really good reading year so far, even though, like I said, I'm a little bit behind. The books that I've been reading, I definitely have been enjoying more than I have last year, I think. And I think it's just a matter of coming into my own and kind of figuring out what I'm interested in reading and sticking with those versus just experimenting with different things, and maybe some things don't work out. I mean, I still have read some bad books, but I have read a lot of really good books. So I'm really excited to see what the rest of the year has in store. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have for you. I hope you liked this video. If you did, don't forget to hit the thumbs up down below to help support this channel, and also hit subscribe to follow me on my reading journey if you haven't already. Like always, all of my socials will be down below. So we have TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Goodreads, the works. And yeah, once again, I hope you liked this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.